most black folks don't complain. You know, when I was a little boy and my sister and I were like 7, 8 years old, and we were running and we fell in the gravel, my parents would go pick my sister up and kiss her and wipe her knees off and say, "You okay, Yvonne? Is everything okay?" "Yeah, Mommy and Daddy." He looked at me and said, "Get up." I thought they were being mean, but they were trying to prepare me for the world that I would be part of. And they're right. I had to get up. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. And I think that's why I think it was so just touching, your performance in that film, how important that performance is. And I actually see versions of that character show up again later in other projects that you've appeared in and that you've been behind the lens. That character, I think, set a tone, and it was the first time we really seen a character like that. And I think that you were the perfect person to play that character.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for that performance. It's really stunning. I want to talk to you about Good Times. I saw that you wrote an episode called Cousin Raymond, co-wrote an episode, but I went and visited that episode. It was in the last season of the show. And it's actually an episode dealing with having a gambling addiction. And Florida's Cousin Raymond comes home and he's coming to some money, but they find out it's because he's been playing the horses. I'm curious how you found yourself in that writer's room and how that episode came about.
Well, you know, the show was, how can I say, very much open to us. You know, it was during a time, you know, where there weren't a lot of black shows on. And for us to express the truth about who we were as a people, not just buffoonery, but going into the depths of who we are and were. And to a certain extent, it was rare. And so working in that way was a privilege. You know, I wish more and more of that existed today. You know, where the exploration of who we are in terms of, how can I say, I consider our culture a culture of alchemy. You know, Jesus was the first alchemist. He turned water into wine. But you give us guts, we turn them into chitlins. But that's all we were given to eat. But Masa ended up eating them too because they tasted so good. And so I believe that, I hope the message is not lost on the youth of today.
Exactly. I'm curious how much involvement you had in the episode writing, because I know sometimes when it's your first television episode, you get rewritten. A lot of your words don't wind up on the screen. I really enjoyed the episode, so I was curious how much of your words were you able to watch the episode and say, yeah, that feels like what I did, or they rewrote me a lot?
They paid me a lot of respect, thank God, and so a lot of what I felt in terms of character was left in. But in TV, I mean, you know, it's not just the writers. It's the producers. It's the network. So, I mean, if you did or said something and the director loved it, it doesn't mean that that's what's going to be seen. It goes through a layer of editing. And so that's just the reality.
How was that for you, dealing with that as a young writer?
On certain levels, it was frustrating. But whatever I got to get through, I was grateful for and thankful for. And being one of the few blacks that was able to be a part of that at that time. So I felt fortunate. That makes any sense.
It does. I thought the character that you were introducing, Cousin Raymond, was a very layered, interesting, human guy.
Yes, human.
I mean, he felt very charming. You were sort of very charmed by him as an audience. Obviously, the characters are charmed by him. And you feel for him when he goes back and takes the money that he was leaving, the $10,000 with Florida and her family. He has to come back and take it because it is an addiction, and you do feel that. Back to you being on screen.
I love the role because it was so multi-layered. I love complex roles. I mean, because we are complex as a people. And we're not just one thing. We may appear to be one thing, but there's so many levels of who we are. And working with Richard Gere was like one of the best actors ever, and a very humble person and a collaborator. Mm. So it was a challenge because working, you know, accepting a role where you found out in the end that the character was gay was a challenge. And I was told by friends not to take the role because, it would damage my career.
Mm.
But he was such a layered human being. I mean, gay, one thing.
He's also someone would call a.
Yes.
Is he like technically a pimp?
He was a pimp. A gay pimp, yes, that's what he was.
You made me say it. I was like, look.
He was.
That's what I can gather.
Well, he was.
Watching the film. Yes.
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a successful one.
Right. I mean, Richard Gere, one of his workers.
Don't make me lose my money.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I was trying to say you got competition. This other lady get me,
You know what I'm saying?
Give me more high profile clients. What were the conversations like with your agent or manager or team at the time, or were those conversations happening, or were you just aware that, hey, this is going to be something special? Could you tell that you want to be a part of this because of what the subject matter was, because it was pushing boundaries, but it also happened to be well written and beautifully directed? Were all those things you were taking into consideration when making those decisions?
Yes. I mean, I first working with Richard and the director, and the script was fascinating to me, and I just love great writing.
So fascinated by the people that helped make these movies, because at the time it must have just felt like a job. But I also wonder if, because you talk about cosmos and energy, there also must have been some sort of feeling on set, in particular in that scene, the first scene we see with Richard Gere sitting down at the table and you two conversing. Can you feel a sort of magic or a sort of energy while you're making it? Is there an ease to it that feels sort of unique?
Well, I come from theater.
What do you think theater gave you that helped you in this iconic career that you've been able to build?
Well, theater, how can I say? It made me understand that if you're really an actor, you're not acting.
Mm.
You become the character. As one of my great teachers told me, he was a director, one of the first black directors on Broadway with Raising the Sun, Lloyd Richards. One time he said something, I was acting, and he says, Bill, it's okay, but you're not. I said, what do you mean? I got all my lines. He says, no, Bill. After you have all of the lines memorized, you must do one thing. Fall into darkness and backward. Great actors, the great ones, I mean, when they're on film or on a stage, you're into them because they have become that person.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We're going to go back to TV for a second. And this is, you stepping behind the camera. This is a TV show I used to watch all the time with my grandmother because she said the lead character reminded her of a white version of my grandfather, who I never got to meet. He died before I was born. It's a show called Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched it a lot. And I had no idea that you directed an episode of the show. It was in the first season, too. It was early on.
Mm-hmm.
How did that TV directing gig come your way?
Well, I've been very fortunate to have, during that time when most shows didn't have any black directors, to be able to direct a number of television shows. My first show, I think, was called Knots Landing, and David Jacobs hired me for Knots Landing. And I'll tell you the reality of how I got my first job as a director. I had submitted my reels and everything to all of the major shows because I just come out of AFI and I had my little 15-minute movie and I was singing around to the networks. Nobody would hire me. And so one day my agent called me and says, "Hey, Bill, hey, David Jacobs wanted to see you for Knots Landing." I said, "Really?" I got my little suit together and went to see David Jacobs, and he looked at me. He had mixed my reel up with somebody else's.
Oh, wow. Wow. Come on.
We had already gone through pre-production, so he couldn't fire me.
What?
That's how I got my first job.
Wow. So you clearly knocked it out of the park, I take it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a great learning experience because I had a great DP, great first AD, great producer. And they knew I didn't have a lot of experience, so they guided me through a lot of it. And I learned a lot.
You are in a film that I think changed things for a lot of us. Particularly for me, I've seen this movie a lot, and it means a great deal to me. And I'm forever grateful to the Hughes brothers for making it. And that is, of course, Menace to Society. Menace to Society is one of those movies that I watched way too much, I think. It was on a lot, very much impacted by it, very much influenced by it, moved by it. I loved how unflinching it is, how relentless that movie can be. And I also realized today, after watching it for the millionth time, there's a character in there, Sharif, who is believing that Allah is what can save the Black community, and is very much reminiscent of a character you played in Car Wash. And I could not make that connection to say, that's very interesting that character continues to show up in films about the Black experience. You are playing a very different character in Menace to Society. You play a detective, and the scene in which you interrogate Kane is one of the most memorable scenes in that movie. And there's a lot of memorable scenes in that movie. As being yes, you're an actor in the film, but you are a director at heart. One of the most fascinating things about the scene is the camera movement that they decided to use. What were you thinking when you obviously saw or were told by the Hughes brothers that that's how they were going to film the scene with the camera circling you and the other actor at the table?
Well, I just thought it was brilliant. I mean, they are brilliant directors, writers, directors, producers. They approach things in an organic way, in a way that a lot of directors don't. They understand structure in terms of the beginning and middle and end of the story. They understand character structure, the beginning, middle, and end of a character. And I wish more of that was taught today. The singing and the dancing and, the message of the movie, these young people coming together that were perceived as throwaways because they were violent or disrespectful. We never could see their humanity, but the film was able to show their humanity.
Yeah, and I think the students obviously are a big part of this movie. How was it trying to find all of these students? And in this class, there is a Lauryn Hill. There is a character as well that shows up again in Wesley that's not unlike your character in Car Wash as well. It must have been very interesting for you being a director and directing a young man who is dressed pretty similarly to your character in Car Wash. But what was it like trying to find all these kids with your casting director?
It wasn't easy, but it was worth the task because I really believed in the message of the film, and so did Whoopi. And so it was worth going through every single actor, every single dance routine, and we had a team of people as choreographers and casting director, et cetera, that brought the whole thing together. It wasn't just me, but I had a team of great, great folks behind me and with me.
What sort of tone did you want to set on that set? Obviously, you have a lot of people. You're juggling a lot of folks. So how were you able to lead a cast that big, that young, and clearly that talented?
With a team of people around me, the first AD, surrounding yourself with the right folks.
What are you, when you're hiring, because there's a lot of hiring that takes place in terms of your crew, in terms of your casting director, your DP, your first AD, what are you looking for when you're sitting across from them and interviewing them to come onto your set, and particularly to help you steer this particular ship?
Can you do your job? When you're making a film, you're managing three things: time, people, and money. See, the studio is very specific. There are people watching you every day. Every, not minute, but second has a dollar amount attached to it. Are you going over budget? That's a problem because it puts my investors and my investment in danger. When you're in that situation, you're under the pressure of the studio itself and the executives. Right. If you're going over budget because you're waiting to make this shot when the moon is in the right place, you got to.
The thing that we all love so much as well about Sister Act 2 is that final sequence when they're singing Joyful, Joyful.
Yes.
And is that Mark Shaman's idea to go with that song in particular, or were you a part of choosing that song? The final sort of finale?
Part of it. I
mean, you do such a beautiful job of directing the whole film, but that last sequence is really important. Everything from Shirley Roth's character coming in to sitting down, obviously Lauryn Hill's character having to start the song again because she's so shocked to see her mother in the audience, and then the Pied de Resistance, which is the big finale performance that you get every angle. We see every look. We see every move. How did you storyboard that in order to make sure everything happened?
Yes.
And then was there a conversation with your editor before you filmed it, or did you also find it in the editing room once you had it all shot?
to work with the DP and the editor.
Yes, of course.
That collaboration.
So the way it turned out in the film, how much of is that exactly how you envisioned it, or were there some things that kind of you moved or moved around for the final image?
Editing is not just copying what you thought; it's a creative process. And you see something, you say, "Well, wait a minute, let's do it. This," and that's why pre-production and storyboarding and those kinds of things are important. Because when I first came, got an AFI, I was, a filmmaker, but I didn't understand the importance of editing, because if you did not get it when you were filming, when you're editing, you don't have it. So it makes you think about what you got to get.
I mean, well, you do such a beautiful job just capturing so much joy and so much youthful energy and also comedy. There's so much comedy as well. And Whoopi is just, Dolores is one of those iconic characters. Obviously, there's a third one we keep hearing the whispers. How do you feel about being a part of, I like to call it the Sister Act legacy? And I think I watched Sister Act 2 more than I watched the first one, I'll be honest with you. What does it mean to you after all these years that you've done the movie? How does it feel to be a part of this franchise, if you will?
It's a privilege. It's a blessing. So glad to have been included in the legacy and to work with the people I worked with. It's like I feel blessed.
Well, we're grateful because we love the movie. I can watch it any day of the week. It always lifts my spirits. And I think it speaks to your legacy and your mission, which is to not believe what you've been told about someone before getting to know them, but also your legacy. If you want to go somewhere, if you want to be somebody, you got to get out there and do something.
That's exactly right.
You do. I think it's always nice when the younger generation sees you and knows that you're for us and have always been for us. And as I come to your last credit, I think, which is a documentary, which I think continues to speak to your mission and your message and how you continue to show up for us as a community and all of us really, which is Dark Girls. I'd seen that film when it came out, and I remember thinking how significant it was and how special it was that you wanted to tackle that subject matter. And I got the chance to watch it again, and it just again continued to be just moved by the fact that you were moved to make a documentary. Documentaries are not easy. They take a long time, and they are not made to necessarily profit from. That's not the point. What drew you to wanting to make a film about dark girls? Because you could have focused on maybe dark boys or dark men, but you wanted to speak to dark girls in particular. What was that moved you to do that?
A relative of mine had a dark-skinned daughter, like I think was 7 or 8 years old, and a teacher had put before her these different color dolls on a piece of paper. And the teacher asked her, because there were a brown doll, a white doll, and a dark dolls. And the teacher asked her, which is a smart doll? It's a dark little girl. Put a finger on the white doll. Which is the pretty doll? Put a finger on the white doll. What is the scary doll? Put a finger on the black doll. What's the ugly doll? Put a finger on the black doll. I mean, at that age, she was already considering herself ugly and dumb. And that encouraged me to, point out from not only a present but an historical perspective, all of the women of dark complexion that have contributed so much to our society, not only our community, but the world. And I mean light girls too, because I wanted people to know that our ignorance is not just confined to one color.
Well, here's the thing I found about documentaries is that I think we usually go into them with an idea of what we think the journey will be or the message we clearly want to communicate to the audience. But then, after years of being on the doc and then you finally get it done, you put it out, you then kind of realize, oh, this is actually the epiphany I'm having, or this is the revelation I'm having. I'm curious if that happened to you on this process of making this film, going into it with an idea of what you wanted it to be, but then by the time you're at the finish line, you've had a whole new type of experience that you didn't expect.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, I have an idea of, interviewing dark-skinned women or light-skinned women and light girls with my vision, understanding, I think, of what it would be. But sitting down in the interview and actually talking to young dark-skinned girls about what they go through every day, not only from the outside world, but their own families. And it impacts you emotionally because you expect it, but you don't expect how deep it goes in terms of the pain that they feel. Their humanity is overlooked because of the color of their skin. They're not good enough. They're always going to be dumb. And the ones that are, it was, I learned a lot.
I think the time that you spent, interviewing all these young girls, a lot of women, it's clear you wanted to get their voices on record.
Yes.
And you want to make sure they were heard. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you were able to capture that and that we have it for the record and that we can revisit it. And I was grateful to revisit it again myself. So I'm really appreciative of you. And I know so many others are for making this film about people that identify as women, people who are dark skinned, people that may have felt like their voices weren't being heard or felt invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something that speaks to their experience. So I'm grateful to you for that.
Thank you very much.
My last question, what is your definition of a really great director?
Someone who can give you a compelling visual experience, has a beginning, middle, and end. And you're making the movie for a reason. You have something to say. The ability to work with actors, to understand what an actor really is.
And your work, I think, as a director and as an actor, and I also want to ask you what your definition of a great actor is, because you're also a phenomenal actor. I think you really do a beautiful job of creating images that are lasting and that we want to continue to revisit, whether it be a documentary about what it is to be a dark-complected young woman in America, whether it be a period piece about Harlem and running numbers, whether it be about sequel to a Sister Act, Back in the Habit, or television shows that we know and love, where you bring your own stamp to it as well. I think you always show up with so much dignity and so much pride, and I also think a lot of grace and empathy.
Thank you.
As well. If you don't mind, I want to make this my last question. What is your definition of a really great actor?
A great actor is a performer that doesn't act, but becomes.
I think it's rare to have one person that's really good at being a great actor and a great director. There are not many of you, but you all are very rare. And your performances that I've got to relive and we sort of witness again are also memorable and so human and so impactful. And then the work that you do behind the camera is also memorable, impactful, and timeless. So thank you for the work that you do in front of the camera, because it's always stunning. The work that you do behind the camera, because it's something that kind of gave us memories that we'll forever hold on to. But I'm also grateful to the work that you do as a mentor. And I think, again, to take us back to Taraji, asking you to be that support, to lend your expertise and your knowledge to her and her fellow actors, I think is really something that speaks to who you are as a human being, as well as an artist. So thank you for all that you do and continue to do for us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very much.